Welcome to Seed Saving 101. I'm Kei of Cydonia Farm out here in Washington, and today we're going to talk about the process of beginner seed saving, so how to identify in the field what you're looking for, choosing plants to save from as part of that, actually harvesting the seed, then storing and drying appropriately for each material, and some organization tools for that whole process. And then I'll go over some resources at the end as well. Cydonia Farm, our farm, is a small, 1/8 acre little produce and flower farm. It's all organic, and we're trying to do a little more restorative style agriculture as we grow. A part of that has been seed saving for us. It's a great way to maintain biodiversity, to work with seeds that have adapted to your own land. And it also just helps us cut down on expenses and grow our variety selection a little more. So why save seeds? Other than cutting down on expenses and biodiversity, it can just be a really great way to connect with what you're growing. You get to watch the whole process beginning to end, from the little cotyledons poking up to the death stages of the plant effectively. And you'll just learn a lot more about how those plants operate by watching it truly through the whole process. So let's get to seed saving. Before we get into looking at a couple plants that are ready to save for seed and the process of saving the seeds, I wanted to talk just a little about choosing your plants. So there's a couple reasons you would want to be choosy with seeds. The first is not all seeds are the same. Some are easy to save. They're going to pop up every year and just be everywhere. If you see something that says it's self-seeding, that's usually a sign that it's really easy to save seeds from. Other plants are biennial, and you'll need to allocate a little more time, or you'll have a perennial plant that you can save seed from, but the growing process will just take much longer. So you want to know what you're getting into with each kind of seed, of course. And that's where we'll talk about resources later that just give you all of that information plant by plant. Another thing to know about seeds is the plant's attributes. Is it one that's going to hybridize? Do you have to worry about cross-pollination being an issue? Squash is a really good example of this. Squash is cross-pollinated and will never have a child squash that looks like the parent unless you've isolated them pretty hard. That being said, you can get some pretty interesting winter squash hybrids that are still fine, and it's a really fun experiment. But you do want to know going in what you are saving for. Are these going to be plants that you want to have the same as their parent? Do you want the same color year after year? Cosmos, for example, they cross-pollinate a little bit, but this was a Memories of Mona cosmos that I saved seeds from, definitely around a lot of other cosmos, but it stayed true to form. This is exactly what it looked like the year before and the year before that. On the other hand, these pink ones are kind of a mix. I saved them from Picotee, which is that outside line you'll see, but there's kind of a mix of white ones, pink ones. Some of them don't have any of that lining at all because they were grown around other cosmos. But because they're flowers and I don't really care too much, they're still beautiful, it was fine. So I'm going to get into the actual harvesting now, the fun part. You're going to need just a few tools, something to harvest into. Obviously you can use a tray or a box of some sort. Paper bags are super good, especially because you can leave them in there to dry. And a big part of choosing what you put this in is somewhere that's not going to contain moisture. I don't use plastic until I know the seeds are totally dry, if at all. The plastic trays are alright because they're open, that sort of thing. If you're gathering seed that's kind of on the small side and you don't have to clean it up very much, you can even pick right into the packet, which I'm going to do with these cosmos because they're pretty clean. And before we start picking, I'm going to show you what to look for. So you can see one here that's in bloom, and then a couple that are in different stages. These two have finished blooming. You can see they're dried, wet, dead petals on them. And then under that, and under the little bits of flower bits that are left over, there are some seeds in here. They're not ready. I can see that they're still green. They haven't loosened up from each other, and they're very small. If I was to open one of these up right now, there would just be a little baby embryo, but not a real seed yet. So going a little further, there's some here that have started to blacken. They've lost all of their little flower material up top. They are maybe ready. You could pick at this stage. I tend to let them get a little more mature just to be on the safe side, and because I'm not usually in a rush to get things like cosmos. Sorry, this is a cosmos. That kind of stuff is seeding almost as soon as you let it go, and it'll keep seeding throughout the fall as long as it keeps producing flowers, and deadheading will help you extend that season. So yeah, these could be ready, but what you really want to look for is when they start to make a star. Then they're dry, they're trying to fall off. You will run into shattering at that point, which is when like you just touch the plant and the seeds go everywhere. It's nature's way of spreading it around. A way to get around that is just to kind of grab the whole head in your hand and then try not to drop any through your fingers. So you have a couple options here. You could just clip right below the flower and keep this into either your tray or your bag and let it go for a few days. These ones are so dry that they are falling on their own, so I just like to go over, grab the seeds, a little bit of flower stuff in there you could pull out. I'm not super worried about it because it's very dry. I'm just storing them right into their bag. And then you always want to make sure that you're labeling. So I don't actually know what this variety is. I saved seed from a gas station that was growing them. I just call them light pink cosmos. And I'll come back to these and give them a little better of a label if I come to clean them up anymore. We'll get into that with storage. Alright, so sunflowers are a pretty easy one to save. I've never had a whole crop go bad. Usually it's just a matter of making sure they're mature enough, which they like to do on the stem like this. These are ones that I'm going to pick into a tray because they're huge and they are going to drop a lot of litter, so I want to clean them up at home later after they've dried further. Two ways you can dry them are going to be to cut them right close to the head and have a tray or a bag or something to dry them in. You can also cut them lower and hang them to dry. You will want to be careful of them losing their seeds to the floor or ground wherever you hang them, but if you get them at just the right time where they're mature but not like drying and already shattering all over the place, you can hang them. It'll be great. So these mammoth ones, you can tell are not ready yet. There's still a lot of green. Usually the leaves are the first to fade, and these leaves even look really healthy. If you pull off some of these little flower bits, you'll see the seeds under there. They're done pollinating, but they're still maturing in size. So if we pull these out, there will be, again, just like a little baby embryo in there, but not enough of a seed to grow anything next year. What you want is them to kind of like fan out a little bit, where they're trying to expel their seeds. Similar to cosmos, everything's going to try to like make it more known that the seeds are ready. Nothing will be closed in and waiting. So with these, we're going to move over, look for one a little more dry, not walk through too many spiders. So a great example of some dry ones is going to be these and these up here. There's no green left on them. You can see that the topmost up here is kind of bold outwards, not so flat or even inward facing anymore. This one's actually started to drop its seeds down a little. There's still a lot of like flower litter from pollination, but all of these little holes have got seeds in them that are splayed out, ready to fall. And they'll just fall off into your hand pretty easily. A quick way to check for viability is to crack one open, see if there's something in there. You can also just kind of smush them between your fingers, and I can feel that these are not collapsing, so they've got seed material inside. And we'll just place that on our tray to dry a little further. And grab its sisters. Closer view, everything here is dry and cracking and flaking off. The seeds are just pretty much falling out with that little bit of activity. Some of these are going to be more stubborn. They're not going to fall apart this easily, especially if you harvest them a little immature. And with sunflowers, they tend to ripen from the outside in, so in here you'll find a whole lot of nothing towards the center. So marigolds are one of my all-time favorites for flower saving. You get so many seeds just out of one little tiny head of marigold, and they're really easy to do. They don't take a lot of attention as far as figuring out which ones are ready because they're so clearly ready when they're dry. And this is a taller variety, Tashkent I believe is the name. It'll grow, as you can see, up to 1.5 feet, 2 feet sometimes. Not your classic like garden marigold, but still same properties as far as seed saving goes. Very easy. So for marigold seeds, you want to look for a dried seed head, and they're super easy to find because they dry very dramatically. They're crispy, they're just like almost falling apart. And you can see opening them up that these seeds are just ready to go. They're falling into my hands. Because the seed pods are enclosed like this, I dry them anyway after harvesting before I store them, so I usually just grab a couple heads like that, even if they are falling apart, and put them into a paper bag and give them like 2 to some number of days to dry further. We'll get into where to store your seeds in between later, but it looks like pretty much it. And you can go through marigolds super quickly. This was all one plant, and so far I've probably gotten, looks like, leftovers of a dozen seed heads off of it. Super heavy producer. So we talked about labeling, and you can always write on the bags. Sometimes you end up with a bag that's like, if I write on this, I'm not even going to see where I wrote. Or you just have a flower or a vegetable that'll be super easy to throw in with your seeds. In this case, I'll pop off a marigold head and just throw it in there, and then I know when I'm going through them without writing, this is that one. It looks the same as it did in the field. And it's also a good trick if you don't remember what variety you planted and you didn't label them in the spring. You can just do it by visual and put on your seed packet reddish one with orange center. Calendula is another one that's prone to shattering, so there's a couple things you can do to stay ahead of that. You can just be super careful when you're picking them and not worry about dropping a few because they're a super heavy producer. Or what you can do is harvest them a little underripe. And for example, here's one that's got a little bit of moisture in the stem still, but I can see that the seeds are mostly dry and getting pretty ready to fall out. This is a great one to harvest. On the other hand, these that are still very green and green and moist through the stem, they're just not going to be mature if I harvest them now. On the other end of that, let's see. Here is a seed head that is super ready to harvest, falling apart just by looking at it. And these are another marigolds that you'll want to pick the seed head, put it into a bag or a tray and let it dry for a few days because they hold a lot of moisture around the seeds. If you are, again, picking them a little underripe like this, you can hang them to dry. You'll still want to watch out for shattering, but it won't be as dramatic as if they dry in the field. So CHARD is the only biennial I'm going to talk about today. What that means is it takes more than a year to ripen seed, with the exception of it bolting early, which is what happened in our farm this year. All of these that you're seeing as long seed-bearing stems, we never got any crop out of them, they went straight to seed. But that worked out for saving seeds. So normally what would happen is you would have your planted chard, get a good crop of the leaves growing the first year in kind of a bush, and then it would overwinter a little, and this next year, following spring, is when you would see these seed stalks. So as far as planting, that's one where you would have to not want to use your garden in the spring, just completely dedicated to saving seeds like this. Now, with finding mature seeds, there's a couple stalks here that are still very green and wet. They're not mature yet, they're getting close, they've sized up, but they haven't dried off, and I want to stay away from that. On the other hand, we've got these brown dry stalks. The seeds just fall right off of them. They're not going to shatter like others, but they will come off very easily, and CHARD is a great one. You can just strip it. It's super easy. Maybe suss out the leaves and really small bits at the top that aren't seed, but pretty easy to get a good crop there. So another technique you might want for seed saving is to clean out in the field or the garden so that you're not just hauling a bunch of green material in, collecting it, sorting at your desk. Great thing to use when you have short days, but it's nice to just keep all the compost outside. So for CHARD, what you could do is cut all these stalks, bring them in, hang them up, have them in a bag, what have you. Or just clean it in the field. Instead of bringing this whole thing in, you're just bringing those few seeds. So lettuce here is an example of one that doesn't ripen all at once. The seed head up here is about half ripe, half not. And what you can do with something like that is take it in to dry it, and then more of them will ripen on there. I'm going to cut these kind of low because I'm going to do a hang dry in the greenhouse. You can see plenty of the plants here just aren't even close. So anything that's this green, still has flowers on it, isn't going to be ready for seed for a few weeks yet. And just to get closer, here's what that looks like, kind of half and half. You'll see the ones that are dry and a little feathery, and some of them are even splitting open to reveal seeds already. but there's still plenty of green ones on here that aren't ready. Gonna give them some time to dry indoors. So for hanging things dry, you want to have a dry environment in which to hang them so that they do dry before molding or anything. Lettuce is nice because it's very spread out around the tops, so it's not going to be too hard. What I'm going to do is clean up the leaves off of it just to keep additional moisture away and prevent molding. And then you'll just want to clean them up like so. And the tops of the stems, if you dry herbs, it's a very similar process. You just want to make sure there's plenty of air. It's very, very warm and dry in here, so I don't have to worry too much about moisture. It's a slug. So, I got those all cleaned up. I'm going to grab a little bit of twine. And at this part of the stage, some tools that are going to be really helpful: twine, scissors. You can also just use like rubber bands and clips to hang from. The seed drying that I have in my house is just a string in a dark hallway with a bunch of paper clips on it, and I'll bundle things up and hang them from there. Makes a cute little house decoration too. So voila, we have our bundle. It's pretty tight, nothing's going to fall out as it shrinks and loses moisture. And I usually have some hooks around here. These radishes have been drying, like I said, for a few weeks. They're nice, you can like hear the little seeds rattling around in the pods. Radishes are not gonna just throw their seeds everywhere. You actually have to break into the pods a little, and we'll do that through storing. But now I'm just gonna try to grab a few branches, not take this entire pile into where we're doing storage work, but just kind of focus on more of just the seeds and a little extra. Before we get started going through variety to variety, I just want to talk about a few tools with the process of drying and storing your seeds. So first off, having a good scissors or clippers is crucial because you just want to be able to make quick, fast cuts, not be like digging around through a plant and maybe getting seeds everywhere in the process. If you have a clean cut, it's not going to throw as many seeds all over the place. Kind of nice. A knife can be helpful too. Any kind of knife. I like a folding pocket knife so I don't stab myself. Tweezers for more difficult varieties, none of which we're going to be dealing with today, but in some cases you will with particular specialty flowers and vegetables have to tweeze all the little individual seeds out. And it's no fun, but it is well worth it. A towel. Always clean your workspace. Say it again, always clean your workspace, or you will have poppies coming up in your chard and anemones and I don't even know what. Seeds will mix. Give it a good clean. Some twine. You can use it to bundle things up if you want to hang them to dry a little. Or you can use it as the line that you hang things on, but always helpful to have a little twine. And last but not least, some way of marking and storing these seeds. So I like to use paper coin envelopes. They're super cheap, they decompose, they don't decompose so fast that you can't reuse them from year to year, which is kind of nice, although these are all fresh. And they don't really soak through unless you get them super wet, so writing in pen or marker won't be an issue for the seeds. Just put those there. You can also use plastic. If you do that, no matter how dry your stuff is, I still recommend poking a few holes. And if the seeds are super small, like poppy, that they would get out through the holes, just find a way of storing it upright. Jars are also a good option. Again, if you can leave them open or have holes in the top of the jar, that would be good. And marking them, if you can't write directly on it, I do this with jars a lot of the time. I like some coffee stirrers or just some tongue depressors, whatever. You can write it on there and just pop it in the jar with your seeds. So we're going to start with Cosmos, which these are ones I've had saved for about a week and they're super dry. You can kind of see them just like flying away from each other. Something nice about having a smooth surface, and wood is even a little grippy, but as you can see there's a lot of just little like seed chaff left in here that I want out. So if you have a surface that's smooth enough, you can kind of blow that away and keep the seeds. You gotta really get that exactly right, like not blow it too hard or they're all gone. Close enough. I got a lot of seeds here. So yeah, for cleaning up cosmos, pretty easy. You just want to get the majority of that stuff away. It's very dry, so it's not too much of a problem, but it will decompose differently than the seeds, and if left for a while can create a problem, or if it gets wet, that would be an issue as well. Sunflowers. Just a couple ways to clean sunflowers. If you have ones like this nice mammoth sunflower, they're really easy to get the seeds out of. I just get a bowl or even the tabletop and just kind of comb them out. They don't try to jump too far, jump a little. And you just don't get a lot of extra flower material. They pop out quite easily. And this can be true for smaller varieties too. A lot of mine, for one reason or another, do not like to let go of their seeds. But as you can see, they come out really clean. I'm just going to put a few out here. And this is a mammoth variety, though I don't know exactly what, because it was free. So yeah, we'll take those and give them a little parcel real quick. I'm going to go over a couple other tricks though for sunflowers if you're finding ones that just don't come out as easily as that large variety. One thing you can do is put the whole head in a jar, or even split the head in half. Just shake it. These still don't want to come out. This is a super stubborn one. But I think I got about 3. I don't know how well these are going to show because they're very dark, but they're really packed in there. Like, they don't want to come out. I might just have to break the head apart to get them persuaded. And even so, they're very well held in there. So there's a lot of variety even within a species. And we'll save that one for later, but that's one technique you can do. You can also always do that with a paper bag. If you've got seeds that fall more loosely, just shaking them in a paper bag will get them out pretty easily. So here's one I already had harvested the other day before we got a lot of rain. It's baby's breath, and as you can see, I just took the field tag out as I harvested it to mark these. I was trying to beat the rain, so not trying to record every single bag. Baby's breath is one that falls very free. The seeds just kind of explode out of the thread-like flower structure, and it's a really good candidate for just having a paper bag and kind of just like scrunching the plant around. You can shake it, but it's not entirely necessary. They're so fast to come out. And these are not all empty yet, but as you can see, there's quite a bit of seed and still some of the flower tops in the bottom of the bag. So I'm gonna just take out a small handful, see how clean that's gotten. There's still a lot of debris in here, which I'm going to just kind of roll my hand over to try and loosen up any extra. Just take that over back into the bag so that if there is still seed in these pods, it'll come out in the next round. But there's a lot of seed here just from that little handful. So that's a little bit of plant material, but I'm not too worried about it. That seems reasonable. So just going to write up our envelope, and that's baby's breath. Okay, marigolds are one that do need a little more attention cleaning, and any flowers like this that really hold on to their petals after they've dried. And this flower's about half and half for when that happens. You can see you can pull the petals off, but they might bring some seeds with them, so you just want to be careful to pull the seeds apart. But these ones, once you open them up, the seeds are very prominent. You kind of want to scrape them out of the shell there. And it's good to have somewhere handy to put compost so it's not just piling up. I just usually use a bowl from the kitchen. So yeah, there's about a flower's worth of seed. And as you can see, each flower produces a whole lot of seed, and each plant produces a lot of flowers. So marigold, very heavy producer, wonderful garden plant. And these you can tell are mature because they've gotten a lot of color. You can't always feel the seed so much in here because they're so narrow. But if you find ones that are just completely blanched white and yellow, they probably haven't produced a seed. So this is calendula, which is a heavy, heavy seed producer, great garden plant. Definitely one of my least favorite to sort through because there's a lot of flower material that gets stuck to it, but we will persevere. You can see kind of the difference of ripeness. These are some that I brought in to save for petals, And like we showed in the field, there are some that just have very immature seeds, and these like never darkened up or got loose. Even though you can pick them a little immature, this was too far. So that's some idea of how small and green they would have been. And the finished product is kind of a mix of seeds, and they all look like kind of crazy sea worms of some sort. They're a weird looking seed. Lots of them though. So yeah, sorting these out is going to be a little tricky because some of the parts of the flowers just look like the seed. There's going to be these little like side containers that look like seed on the back, and then you flip them around and there's the seed hiding inside. And you can kind of just like zhuzh them up a little and then try to move that stuff, and that'll clear out a lot of them. But you do want to go through all the flower debris because seeds really like to stick in and hide with calendula. So CHARD, we talked about cleaning up in the field. You can see this one, I did not really do that. But for the most part, it's clean as is. And each of these little gobstopper looking pods is going to have a couple seeds in it. You don't have to get those out. This is how you'll be shipped CHARD seeds if you buy any. This is how you'll plant them as well. So yeah, for this I would clean up the tips that have immature seeds on them, get them out of there. That's a good candidate for mold. And then just like some of the little bits. But they're pretty clean to start with. Easy plant. So, back to these radish pods. These are each going to contain a couple of seeds. They're a little tricky to open. And this is going to be similar to what you get if you grow anything in the mustard family. It's going to create a large stalk, like some of ours are up to 5 feet, just totally covered in pods. And some varieties will split these pods open on their own, other varieties such as this radish will not. Start with that. And so when you open these up, you got kind of like a styrofoamy sort of filler in there, and the seeds are going to be in that. So you just sort of gotta convince them to leave. And if you don't get everyone, that's fine. Believe me, you'll have a lot of seed pods from even one radish plant. So I wanted to touch on beans real quick, since they're a super easy place to start. Beans and peas, in fact, really any legume is really a good place to start with seed saving. So beans, when they dry and split, will twist like this. The pods will twist, so that they're spraying beans in further and more directions. You want to catch them in the field before they do this, really before they split at all, when their plants are dry and brittle, but not opening up and throwing seeds everywhere yet. And then you can just, at home, kind of go through, crack them open, and just push the beans out. These are ones that once you've cut them down from the field, you want to store them and dry them for a few days. Hanging is a great way to do that. You can hang them up in a shed, in your kitchen, just somewhere where they'll get real dry. And then after I shell them like this, I want to let them dry again just to be super sure. These all feel like they're very, very dry. You can kind of hear. It's not a lot of soft sound there. And yeah, as you're going, you want to watch for mold. You can see a lot of these on the outside are pretty moldy, but you definitely want to open it up, see what they look like on the inside. These look great. It's just a surface mold. You will find some that have just like bad coloration or spots. Discard those, they're not going to grow. You probably don't want to eat them. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this was a really helpful and informative workshop, and that you can apply these as soon as possible, because it's time to save some seeds. Before I go, I just want to say, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Cydonia Farm through Instagram or email. I'll leave both of those for you in the comments. And I'm also going to leave some notes for resources. So the first one is one that you're going to have to research on your own, but look up local seed libraries. See if any nurseries are hosting them in your area, or any local farm supply stores, and maybe even reach out to other farmers about saving seed. So some of the books I would recommend as well are, my favorite is The Complete Guide to Saving Seeds. This is a phenomenal resource. It has the highly scientific stuff in the beginning that I don't even know all of it, but You can find every answer in there. And then it's got just 2 or 3 sections, A to Z, of the different kinds of seeds you could be saving. And all about the plants and the pollination details. It's everything you need to know. Another couple good ones, all from Chelsea Green Publishers, are The Seed Garden by the Seed Savers Exchange. That's a compilation. The Seed Underground by Janice Lee Ray, and Seed to Seed by Suzanne Ashworth. And again, this is all in the notes. And I'm going to put in a couple seed companies as well that I trust for stock, some of the best people to get from that are also supplying and maintaining diverse heirloom varieties. Thanks again for joining us, and enjoy saving seeds!